keep that in mind so everyone can behave. Welcome to this Behive experience, online experience. Behive has been around for the past 3 years. Our goal has been to help students, young professionals, become better communicators, culturally more agile and more employable through a series of different events that we organize in Beijing and Shanghai, along some incredible partners and trainers such as Eric for today. If you're not following us, you can do so on WeChat and various other social media. If you are on WeChat, we encourage you to join one of our WeChat groups. This is one of our public WeChat groups where we will be sharing the recording for this session. And this is a way for you to connect with the community. If you are not in any of the Behive WeChat groups yet, we have a lot. So I encourage you to join one if you haven't yet. If you haven't completed our future survey, so this is about your future. This is all about you. So we want to see what kind of needs you have and how we can help you fulfill them. So if you have not done the future survey yet, we encourage you to scan the QR code, take a couple of seconds and tell us what you think and what you need. Our next session is with Mario, and it's organized by Behive Shanghai, and it's all about finding your strengths and focusing on your strengths and not so much on your weaknesses. So this is going to happen next week. It's an online free event. If you haven't registered yet, please do so and discover your strengths with us. Great. So today is it's a very special day. It's our first time hosting Eric. Eric has been a martial artist, a Googler, has worked with incredible artists and actors such as Jackie Chan, and he's here with us to share his tips on how we can kind of visualize a better future and create a better tomorrow. And before we jump into the topic, just some housekeeping. I'll be making notes in the chat box, so don't mind me in the chat. If you have any tech issues, please reach out to Pandelitsa, which you can see in the chat. And if you have any questions throughout the session, feel free to unmute yourselves and just jump in and tell us what you think. So without any further delay, let's welcome Eric.
All right, thank you, Petros. Hey, everybody. Hope you're doing okay. My name's Eric. I'm a leadership coach. I'm currently in Detroit, Michigan. It's 6:30 in the morning. I've had coffee, but bear with me because it might take a second to kick in. So I'm gonna, give me 1 second to share my screen and we can kick this thing off. Okay, so I think we can see this. Present. Yeah, all right, hang on. Let me just adjust something real quick. There we go. All right, so like I was saying, oh, whoops, I got to push a button again. There we go. There it is. My name's Eric. I'm a leadership coach. The workshop today is about practical visualization or ways to practice visualization, techniques for envisioning and creating a better tomorrow. And I'm curious if anybody understands the reference, like why I have this picture of this guy smoking a cigarette off of a $100 bill. If you do, please unmute yourself and say something. I'm gonna give it 5 more seconds. All right, no action movie fans in here. This movie is called A Better Tomorrow, starring Chow Yun-fat. Amazing action movie. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's from the 80s, directed by Johnny Woo. All right, so let me just talk real quick about workshops with me. I would love for this workshop to be interactive, for it to be conversational. So if you're willing to, I would love it if you turned your video on and at least pretended to be interested in the things that I'm saying. I'll be looking at all of you and trying to gauge folks' reactions so I can get a sense of, is this clicking? Is this interesting or not? So yeah, if you could turn your video on, I'd really appreciate it. And feel free to jump in anytime with questions or comments. Interruptions are very welcome. So if you ever have questions or you're like, wait, what? Or you want to be like, oh yeah, I tried this once and it felt cool or whatever, I would love to hear from you all. So feel free to jump in at any time. And I'd like for this to be fun, for it to be weird. I put some sunglasses on Rumi. I've got Chow Yun Fat smoking cigarettes with $100 bills. Like, this is not meant to be like too serious or scary or boring of a thing, even though it's under the guise of professional stuff. I think what this is really about is transcending the boring stuff and getting to what we really care about. So hopefully that, at least for me, those things are usually fun and goofy and weird. And if you want to swear, that's encouraged. I'll try to swear as much as I can. We'll see how much it happens. So sort of like a framework that I think will make this whole workshop more interesting, or more likely for you to get something out of there, is if the more open-minded that you can be about what it is that we're talking about, and the more that you can avoid any kind of moralistic judgment of what I'm talking about. In other words, saying this is wrong and Eric is a bad person because he's talking about this thing, or anything like that. The quote that I've got here that I think encapsulates what I'm going for is, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. So as much as possible, I would like for us to be in that field during the duration of this workshop. And then when we get out of it, we can go back to judging people and being, fighting each other and whatever, if you want to. And then, 然后我还没怎么看到有中国人在，但是如果有不爱讲英语的朋友，就随时可以用中文问问题都可以。Okay. So before I move on and get into like the actual meat of this whole thing, does anybody have any questions or anything that they want to say? All right, I'll take that as a no. So the first thing that I want to say is that dreams don't have to be serious. It could be your dream to juggle tacos, as it is perhaps for this gentleman right here. So I just want to do a quick exercise just to get like ourselves working, just to get warmed up, get stretched out. So I've got a 3-minute writing prompt. So what I want everybody to do is to take out a sheet of paper and a pen or a pencil or a colored pencil or a crayon or whatever, or cut your finger and write in blood or whatever you like to do. And I want you to write out and think about what is one of the most ridiculous or fun things that you really want to do in your life. And so a tip for this exercise is try to have fun with it. Try to make it ridiculous, make it be absurd. And something that might help you, so like a sort of a prompt or something that might make this easier for you to write about is, if your happiness wasn't dependent on getting this thing, on getting what you wanted, what would you want? So I'm going to give everybody 3 minutes, and then at the end of that time, I would love it if you could put whatever, like a summary or a synopsis of what you've got into the chat. We've got about 1 minute left. If you're still trying to think of something, the thing that I've thought of that I would love to do is like remake an 80s music video and post it on YouTube. So something like that. So 30 seconds left in the prompt. If you've already got an idea, I would love to see you post it in the chat. All right, so I'm just going to read some of these out. We've got to meet the builders of the Egyptian pyramids. That would be awesome. To jump from the stratosphere towards the earth and land successfully. That's an important part of that goal, I think. To buy a yacht for my friend and cruise the Mediterranean. That sounds amazing. Let's see. Try a high gravity machine to train acrobatic pilots. Whoa. That sounds amazing. Yeah, crazy G's. I once flew a stunt plane. It was surprisingly very cheap. I just paid some guy like $250, and yeah, high G's are really intense. After I did that, I basically just like laid in bed for the rest of the day. It was just like, to beat mortality and become a half synthetic and half human. That sounds awesome too. And visit another planet in the solar system. That would be cool. All right, so I'm going to keep going, but if you all want to keep posting stuff in there, I'd love to see it. Let me go back to the screen share. This one, yeah. Okay, so just like a quick overview of what we'll be talking about today, or the skills that I'm going to be going over. These are practical visualization techniques to help you get better at knowing what you want, to get better at getting those things that you want, and to get better at identifying and reducing whatever internal obstructions that you have to getting what you want. So I'm talking about like subconscious blockers, imposter syndrome, all that kind of stuff. That's what this technique that I'm going to get into in a little bit later is all about. And the agenda for today, I'll spend a little bit of time talking about my vision, and then we'll go into helping you identify what you want on a deeper level. Then I'll explain the background of visualization, why it works, how it works, the science behind it, experience with it. And then finally, I will explain the exercise, which hopefully we can all do together. So before I move on, any questions? All right, moving on. So here's why I want to talk about this, or my vision. My vision is a world where people are able to tune into and realize their core desires. That is, desires which are unsullied by greed, hatred, and delusion. Or another way to put it is a word full of weirdos and freaks. And I mean the good kind, not the pedophile kind. So this is opposed to the current reality, from my perspective anyways. People mostly seem to know what they want via the channels of jealousy or advertising. And I think what I end up seeing in a lot of people anyways is too much standardization and what I would call basicization, which is really boring. Too much Starbucks, basically. Not that Starbucks doesn't have delicious coffee, but there's just, I would like a little more diversity, I think. So what do you really want? I was saying that as an example of my vision, but what is your vision? And one thing I want to note is that when we see a problem outside, that's usually a projection of something that we don't like about ourselves. It comes from the energy of hate. An example of that was me just complaining on the last side about how Starbucks is boring. That's coming out of an energy of hate. It's not particularly, it doesn't feel good. It's not particularly motivating. It can give us some like negative energy to make us want to punch somebody or something like that, which can come in handy sometimes. But what I would argue is that love is a much more valuable motivator. So when we see a thing that we want to create, then we're tapping into something much deeper. We're tapping into love, as demonstrated by the, what is that, the left fist of this guy here. Does anybody recognize this movie, by the way? I'm going to have a lot of weird references in here. I would love it if somebody caught any of them. It's Do the Right Thing, Spike Lee movie, really amazing movie. Another thing to think about in terms of figuring out what it is that you really want. If you feel very serious about that thing that you really want, in other words, you feel like you must have it, or you need to have it, or you should have it, or your parents tell you you should have it, or your boss tells you you should be this way, or whatever, that is usually a sign of that's not actually something that you want. Or there might be something that you really want, but the energy that you're coming from is grasping, or what's the word I'm looking for? It's making me think like, I'm sure a lot of people have experienced this in the world of like attraction or dating. I'm a guy, so I'm going to say if there was a girl who I really liked and I like, oh, I like really want to like go on a date with this girl, or like, oh, I hope she like pays attention to me or notices me or whatever. The more like serious I am about the pursuit of that relationship, probably the more likely I am to push that girl or that woman away from me. So our goals in life work in the exact same way. And that I think I mean, I've experienced that coming the same way. If there's a woman who's way too into me, I'm like, whoa, back off. So I'm pretty sure that that works both ways. So I think a good way to get good at this skill, the skill of figuring out what it is that you really want on a deep level, free from extrinsic motivations, free from societal pressures, is to start with something fun or ridiculous, which is why I started with the taco juggling exercise. Something that makes you laugh, something that makes you smile, something that sparks joy, as Marie Kondo might say. That's a great place to start. And then basically once you start there, you can sort of start to feel, oh, there's this interesting energy that is like compelling me towards this thing. That is what we're looking for. And that's what we want to be able to tune into, because that is going to be a much more powerful motivator. And once we get into the visualization exercise, if you're coming from that kind of an energy, it's much more likely to be effective. And I know I keep saying like things like energy. I'm not talking about like mystical stuff, although that's like cool and fun. Really what I'm just talking about is felt emotions. Anytime we have a thought, anytime we have an emotion, there's basically a physical reaction in our body. That's the energy that I'm talking about. When we're angry, we might feel tension, or our heart might beat faster, or, I mean, there's all types of scientific research about what happens inside of our body when we feel anger or whatever. So that's the kind of energy I'm talking about, not like that qigong, like that kind of stuff. Although that stuff's super cool. It's not a lot of science about that stuff. So any questions? Feel free to, I guess I can I see the chat? Oh, I can't see the chat. Let's see. I'm just going to look and see if there's any questions. So you can post questions in the chat if you don't feel like shouting out, or you can just unmute yourself and say, hey, what the hell?
Yeah, no questions so far.
All right, cool. Thanks, Petros. All right, so moving on. So to identify what you really want, does it feel like love or hate?
We have a question now.
Oh, okay. Question.
So, from Schweib. So basically you're saying that we should not be so serious about our goals?
Basically, not in the sense of, when I say serious, I guess what I mean is in the sense of like, I must have this thing, like grasping towards it, that we don't want. We can be serious in the sense of, well, the way that I like to think about it is there is emotional investment and there is mental/physical investment. Mental, physical investment is let's work hard towards what the thing that it is that we're wanting. And let's, I'll exert myself physically if that's what I need to do. I'll exert myself mentally if that's writing stuff or practicing a certain skill or whatever. Do all of that. The emotional investment, what that is it's saying, if I don't achieve this desired outcome, then I am not valuable as a human being. That kind of seriousness doesn't help us. So if we're so attached to the thing that we're wanting that we feel like we are not good or we are not whole without having that thing, that's going to create problems. So mentally and physically, yes, please be serious about whatever it is that you're wanting to achieve. But when it comes to emotional investment, don't mix up your personal self-worth with your ability to achieve a specific outcome. That is likely to make you feel shitty in the long run. And it's also likely to, it will make it more difficult to achieve the thing that you're wanting to achieve. Cool. So what I was saying in summary is, go towards the love, go towards the fun, and fun stuff is going to work best for visualization. So I'll give you an example of how I've used visualization in my life. So I used visualization techniques to help me get a job at Google. I also listened to the Karate Kid soundtrack, get me super pumped up for that job interview. I got hired, but before I started working at Google, I got hired like when I was still in college, and then I didn't start actually working until after I graduated, so like almost a year later. So I had a lot of time to think about life, and I sort of started to think to myself, if I could get a job at Google, if I can use things like visualization and hard work or whatever to be able to do something like that, what is something else that I could do that would be a lot more cool and a lot more fun for me personally? So I started brainstorming, and I thought, well, I like China. I studied Chinese for a long time. I like action movies, as I guess I've already made quite a few action movie references. And I really like Kung Fu. So I put all of those together, and my vision became, I want to become a stuntman in China. I want to move to China and be a random white guy in Kung Fu movies, because I had seen a lot of random Kung Fu movies. I thought I'd probably be one. And it turns out I could. And this is a picture of me in an action movie with, I'm like the guy screaming like this. I'm like pushing a giant boulder, I guess, something like that. We're ancient Romans, and this guy, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but the guy on the right, who you can't barely really tell, is Jackie Chan. So those are just some examples of how I've used it. So one of those things was sort of more serious, getting a job at a corporation or whatever. The other one was a lot less serious, being a stuntman in a Kung Fu movie. And I like, that was a career that I did for two years. It's not like I just visualized getting in a Jackie Chan movie and then did that and got out.
We have a question from David. Is that your hair? So you had long hair?
That was my hair, yeah.
That's
at
really
one
cool.
point.
Really cool.
When I lived in China, I grew a ponytail because I feel like henchmen in movies, like bad guy henchmen, which is sort of what I was going for, have ponytails a lot. So it's like if I grow a ponytail, I thought that would give me more work. But it turns out that was not the case at all. Most foreign roles are like World War II movies, and you got to have like, a buzz cut or something. And also, if they want somebody with long hair, they just give you a wig. So pro tip, if you want to work in acting, probably having short hair is a better idea, or at least not being too attached to your long hair.
So the question from David is, yes, so the question is, what about intermediate goals that we don't really care about or want, but are key to getting the goals we really care about? So for example, mid goal is getting a degree, which kind of leads you to the end goal of obtaining financial freedom. So if I'm not kind of describing your questions right, you feel free to jump in and supplement what I'm saying. So this is a question. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess, so I'll give you a story that exemplifies that. And I'm not making this up. I stole it from somebody and I can't remember it fully. So apologies to whoever I'm stealing this from, but it's basically a story of this is like, imagine we're in medieval Europe, and this guy wanders into a new town and he sees all these people carrying like huge heavy stones. And he's like, what the hell's going on? And he sees this one guy carrying a stone who just looks like really pissed off, really like having a rough time, looks like, man, this, whatever he's doing really sucks. And he asks him like, hey, what are you doing? Why is everybody carrying these stuff? Or like, he asked this guy specifically, what are you doing specifically? And he's like, well, can't you see I'm carrying this heavy ass stone? This is really shitty work. So then he just like storms off. He's really pissed off about what he's doing. He's like not satisfied with that answer. He sees another guy who doesn't look so pissed off. In fact, he looks pretty happy about what he's doing. He asks the guy, hey, what are you doing? And he says, oh, we're building the biggest cathedral in Europe. It's going to be like the most badass thing ever. I'm so happy that I get to be a part of this, whatever. So the moral of the story here is one person was stuck in the moment of what he was doing in not thinking about the bigger picture. The other person was focused on the bigger picture and realizing that if you want to build a cathedral, you got to move some heavy ass rocks. So all that is just to say, the more in tune and aligned that you feel with your bigger picture goal, the more likely it is that you'll be able to enjoy the intermediate steps that get you there. So doing things like visualization can help you to like line those things up. It can help you see, if I want to have financial freedom, for example, then I have to make some sorts of sacrifices in order to get there. And those sacrifices are worth it for this thing that I want or not. But it's about putting things in context of the bigger picture goal. Does that answer that question? Cool.
Yes. Thank you, Eric.
All right, thanks for asking, David. Any other questions that people want to shout out, or any other ones in the chat, Petros?
Yes, actually I have a follow-up question on what you mentioned. So the idea is that we should put things into context, and okay, we try to see the bigger picture when we need to put something small in the, in the plan of whatever takes us there. So what if you focus too much on the big picture, and that distracts you from putting in from cutting the stones to build this cathedral?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a caveat to visualization. Like, visualization does not replace the actual work. It is a supplement to the actual work. It makes it easier for you to align the big picture thing that you're going after with the thing that you're doing right now, which might not feel that way. So don't get so caught up in focusing on this big picture thing that you don't actually do the work. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in more detail and some of the science behind that in a second. Does that answer your question, Petros, or whoever that came from?
Yes, and we have a question from Anna. It's about how can we get a job at Google without any programming skills with visualization? I guess you're gonna answer this through explaining the.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, I am not a programmer either. Google has like lots of jobs other than engineering, although certainly I didn't even know. I'd be curious if even a majority of their jobs are in engineering. Anyways, I worked in like advertising sales. So you can get a job at anything. I mean, I guess the way that I used that was, and also like, it's not like I just used visualization to get a job at Google. There was a ton of other work that I did, but the visualization helped me along in that process. But I like started when I was like a junior in college. I was like, okay, if I want to work at a big company so I can pay off my huge college loans, which I imagine my American compatriots can empathize with, I need to make a shitload of money. And if I'm going to do that, I might as well work at a company that's nice to work for. Google's the nicest company to work for at that time. They kept on getting, rated best place to work or whatever. So I was like, okay, cool. But I literally spent pretty much a year preparing to get a job at Google. I applied for an internship, which I didn't get. And then they ended up reaching out to me like 6 months after I failed getting that internship to invite me to interview there. So there was a huge amount of work that I did before that. And first of all, having the vision in my mind that, okay, Google's the place that I want to work at, that was really helpful. And then using the techniques that I'm about to share with you all helped me like get myself psyched up for the interview and that sort of thing. But yeah, there's tons of jobs at Google that have nothing to do with engineering. There's, human resources, sales, advertising, marketing. I'm sure they have a lot of people who do design. So it really depends on what you want to do there. But I think if you just search for Google jobs, you can see that I imagine they have a ton of listings. And also, just a random side note, well, at least when I was there, if somebody you referred to get a job at Google got the job, accepted an offer, you would get like $4,000. It's probably more now. This was like 2012 when I was working there. So people get a shitload of money. People who work there want to help you get a job there. So don't be afraid to give it a shot. Anything else?
Awesome. Thank you. That's it so far.
All right, cool. And again, I love questions, so feel free to keep them coming. So I want to talk a little bit about the science of why this works. So there's a weird thing about imagination and reality, and it's that the brain can't tell the difference between these two things. I know that is hard to fathom, and there's could be a lot of philosophical implications to that, but I'm not going to get into that. I just want to talk about what this looks like in science. So first study that I want to share with you all, and I can, if anybody's curious, I can share these slides. I have the citation in the notes, but it was research on people doing free throws, and they had 3 groups. One group shot free throws. One group shot free throws and visualized shooting free throws, and another group did nothing. They wanted to see who's going to improve the most. And it was like for 20 minutes a day for, 2 weeks, something like, let's say. And what they found was that the group who practiced improved. Actually, I think there was a 4th group who just did visualization. The group who actually practiced doing free throws, they improved a significant amount. The group who practiced visualizing improved, but it was something like wasn't statistically significant, but they still improved. And then the group who did both of them improved the most. So all that to say is you still have to do the work of actually practicing the free throws. And if you add in the visualization of, for example, visualizing yourself like, okay, I got to get like my arm lined up perfect. And like, it's all like, if you can imagine it in your brain, it's going to be much more easy for you to do it with your physical body. And also imagine what it feels like when you hit that swoosh or whatever it is that you're going for. So that's one example. Another example is phobia research. Research on people who are trying to conquer intense phobias that they had, whether they were afraid of spiders or small spaces, or I'm terrified of dark underwater spaces. I don't know about you all.
Me too.
And what they found was, so little background on phobias. One of the best ways to cure a phobia is just exposure therapy, which is to say exposing yourself to the thing that you're afraid of, and exposing yourself, and eventually it becomes normalized and you aren't as afraid of it anymore. So what they did is they combined a real exposure therapy. So in other words, exposing you to the thing that you're actually afraid of with like a sort of a visualization-based exercise where you imagined the stimulus that makes you afraid. And you imagine yourself being in that situation, whether that's in a tiny space or having a spider crawling up your arm or whatever. Imagine that, and imagine yourself being calm at the same time. So like feeling that calmness. And what they found was the visualization technique was just as effective as the actual exposure therapy. So again, this is another more evidence to the fact that our brain can't tell the difference between imagination and reality. And then just sort of a thought experiment for you all to play with. Has anybody ever had the experience of having a memory in their mind and they weren't sure if that memory was something that really happened or was like just like some random thing that happened in a dream? Has anybody ever experienced that? It happens to me like fairly often. It's never like major things. It's just like, oh, did I say that? Did I like, it'll just be like, you know, you have dreams sometimes that are really normal. And I'm like, wait a sec, did I have that conversation or was that just a random dream that I had? So our brain really can't tell the difference between something that is a dream, which is obviously a crazy fantasy made up by our minds, and things that actually happen. There's no, it has no way to tell the difference between those two things other than labels, which it arbitrarily applies to those things. And sometimes those labels can get mixed up. Another thing to think about is neuroplasticity. So that is to say, our brain is plastic, our brain can be molded, all the roads are under construction. So every time we learn something, there's basically like synapses in our brain or whatever that are like forming new roads, new connections all over the place. And the more we think in a certain direction, is sort of like what my meditation teacher likes to say is it's like cow paths. The more the cows walk on this certain path, the more that path is going to become, there's going to be less grass, there's going to be less obstruction, there's going to be less stuff growing on that path because the cows have completely trampled it to shit. So our brain basically works the same way. The more that we think in one certain way, the more wide those roads are going to become. Maybe it'll start off as like a small path, and then it turns into a sidewalk, and then it turns into a one-way road, and then a two-way road, and then a four or whatever, and then it's a super highway or whatever. That's basically how our brain works. The more that we think in a certain way or like associate things in a certain way, the easier it becomes to do that. So visualization, in a sense, is just training our brain. It's just proactively creating those paths by changing the way that we think about a specific thing. Another way that visualization works is it's about changing your vibes. And what I mean by your vibes is just sort of like going back to what we were talking about with the phobia research. If you see a spider and you're accustomed to feeling afraid of that spider, I guess I would call fear a certain kind of vibe. And I think everybody's experienced this vibes, not in a mystical sense, but like, let's say you are hanging out, let's say like you're going on a double date and you and your partner are like doing great, but the people who you meet up with a double date just were in a huge fight 5 minutes before you came to their door. You would be able to feel the tension. Those are the vibes that I'm talking about. And what I'm suggesting here and what the visualization is really about is proactively changing those vibes. So what that entails is you tuning into, what am I actually feeling right now? What do I want to feel? And like, let me see if I can shimmy over to that. And the last thing I want to mention is uncovering subconscious resistance. So what might happen in the process of visualizing yourself having these things that you want is there might be self-defeating thoughts that come up, like, I don't deserve this thing, or I'm not good enough to have this thing, or whatever. The more that we can bring those to the surface, the less likely they are to be able to control us, like manipulate us from behind the scenes. So that was a huge amount of information. I want to pause and see if anybody has any questions.
Any questions, guys? Feel free to unmute yourselves and just ask away.
All right, and again, if you do have any questions, anytime, love to hear them. I just want to also reiterate the caveat: you still have to do the work. Visualization does not replace doing the work. So if you're going to use this technique, make sure it accompanies you doing the things like that are actually going to get you to where you want to be. So finally, without further ado, I'm going to share my favorite visualization technique with you all. So this technique works best when you're feeling relaxed and not terrible. So why don't we do this? Let's just, like, everybody take a few deep breaths. Let's try to relax, and let's see if we can actually do this thing together. So I'm going to sit up straight. I've been sitting Indian style this whole time. I'm going to move forward a little bit. I'm going to put my feet flat on the ground. I invite you to do what I'm doing. You don't have to. I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to straighten my back. Just take a couple deep breaths. Trying to relax as much as your body will let you relax. As you're inhaling, trying to straighten your spine. As you exhale, trying to relax. And sitting with the paradox of doing both of those things at the same time. So this is mostly for me because I'm getting kind of tense leading a retreat, or not a retreat, leading a workshop. So I just want to relax so I can guide you all through this in a way that hopefully will be more impactful. What's going to work also, what makes this effective is if you make it into a habit. So for example, if you spend 10 minutes a day doing this, it's going to be much more likely to be effective for you than if you just do it once. And this whole thing is designed to maximize your power of imagination. So the first step is to just choose something that you want to create. So I'll use the example of, I want to be a stuntman in a Jackie Chan movie, because that was a big one for me. So think of an affirmative statement indicating the realization of that thing. And you want it to be in the present tense. So in other words, my affirmative statement was, I am a stuntman in a Jackie Chan movie. Using it in the present tense helps you feel like it's something that's actually happening right now. So you want to visualize yourself having already realized the thing, having already achieved the goal that you are wanting to achieve. And think about and feel, how would that feel? How are you different? So in other words, if you were to achieve that thing, if you were to achieve that goal, what would that make you feel? Would it make you feel excited, happy, ecstatic? And I'm not just talking about the words or like the emotion words of what you might be experiencing. I'm more talking about what are the physical sensations that would be associated with those things. So all emotions are really just our body's physical response to a specific kind of thinking. So if I think I'm happy, or if I think I'm a stuntman in a Jackie Chan movie, I might feel excited, or I might feel, well, if I'm talking about physical sensations, maybe I would feel like butterflies in my stomach, or maybe I would feel like a tingling in the back of my neck, or maybe I would feel like a lightness in my shoulders or something like that. That's what we're looking for, is these physical sensations. So the more of those feels, the more of those physical sensations that you have, the more likely this is to work. The more time that you spend in those physical sensations, the more likely this is to work. And my own personal favorite, and there's no science behind this, but I think the more weird you get with this, and the more like, whoa, that makes it just like feel a little bit more real, because it takes you outside of whatever it is that you're used to. So feel free to get weird with this. And to continue this technique, so the way that I like to do this is as a writing exercise. Different people do this in different ways. But I find that writing things down makes it feel real for me. But maybe that's because I'm more of a tactile person. So maybe it's saying it out loud is good for you, or maybe it's recording yourself saying it and listening to it is better for you. Whatever you think is going to work. I like writing it down. I'd suggest just for as an exercise for us to try it right now, try to write it down, including your name in the first person. So if I was going to take that last statement, I would add in my name and I'd say, I, Eric, am a stuntman in a Jackie Chan movie. And I'd write that down. And then I would repeat the same thing, except I would write it in the second person. So then I would write, you, Eric, are a stuntman in a Jackie Chan movie. And in this situation, I would imagine that somebody else is saying that to me. So what's happening inside my imagination? Maybe I'm closing my eyes, maybe not. And I'm imagining somebody telling me, Eric, you are a stuntman in a Jackie Chan movie. And then I'm feeling, whoa, holy shit, that's awesome. Or this feels great. And I'm feeling whatever I would feel if somebody really were to say that to me. And then I repeat the same process in the third person. So I just write Eric as a stuntman in a Jackie Chan movie. And I imagine, the thing that I'm imagining is somebody else, like two people having a conversation about me. And I'm like, you know, in the kitchen making coffee or whatever. And I hear two people chilling on my couch and they're like, oh, do you know Eric was a stuntman in a Jackie Chan movie? And I'm like, whoa, this is like, I feel so cool. And I'm going to come back and give the coffee and act cool about it and like act like I didn't hear that. But deep inside my heart, I'm going to feel really cool about that, or feel like really happy about that, or feel tingling in my chest, or like excitement, or it's going to make me want to sit up straight or whatever. Again, it's all about the feelings. So this is the base. This is like the main part of this process is writing down, like you pick your thing. Here's the thing I want to achieve. Write it down in the first person, in the second person, and the third person. And every time you write it down, you're imagining that happening and feeling deeply, what would it feel like? What does it feel like as I imagine myself being in this way? Remembering that the brain can't tell the difference between the imagination and the reality. So if you imagine yourself feeling that way, you're beginning to construct those cow paths, as I talked about, or you're creating those synapses, or you're strengthening that like neuro, whatever the hell you want to call it, information superhighway inside your brain. You're creating that already. So you can repeat these 3 steps as many times as you want. I remember when I used to do this as a regular practice, I think I would write each one of them 3 times. So it would end up being like, 9 sentences or whatever. And then we get to the dark side of this exercise. So come to the dark side, we have tacos. So there are tacos, so to speak, on the dark side. There are good things to be discovered in the dark side of this exercise. So what is likely to happen is that as you're doing this, as you're feeling those good things, there's probably also going to be some negative things that you're going to feel. You might you might experience negative thoughts or internal saboteurs, as they like to say in my coaching field. Thoughts that say to you, you're not good enough, you don't have enough experience to do this thing, who are you to think that you could have that thing, or whatever. All these negative things are probably going to start to come to mind. So write those things down, but write them down somewhere else. Don't write them down in the place where you're writing down the stuff that you want, just because you don't want to look at that at the same time. It's probably not that important, but it's something that I like to do. I think I used to write on a piece of paper and then I would turn it upside down and then I'd write the negative stuff there. So I'd write down, you're not good enough, you have no experience, whatever. Then I would look at those statements and I would come up with a new statement to assuage those thoughts, or basically to, I don't want to use the word combat because that's not what we're talking about. We want to integrate these thoughts, so to speak. So it's just like, what's going to make those feel better? So in an example, I could say, I am more than qualified to work for Jackie Chan because, and that's like a true statement. You want this to be, I guess, like the second one that you come up with, you want it to be more easy for you to believe, even in the face of those negative thoughts. So for example, I've seen every Jackie Chan movie and there's a lot of just totally random looking dudes in those movies. And I just thought to myself, these are just totally random guys. It's not like they have some kind of crazy special skill set to be in this movie. They just were in the right place at the right time. That was a much more believable thing to me than actually being a stuntman in a Jackie Chan movie, which does require a little bit more background or whatever. But again, I'm not it's not like I'm a sweet martial artist or anything. This is just a tiny gig that I got where I was falling down steps and doing weird shit like that. So don't confuse me for the people on like Jackie Chan's stunt team who are like some of the best athletes in the world. I'm just like a pretty basic martial artist. But anyways, you don't want to try to fight these negative thoughts, because if you try to fight the thoughts, you'll always lose, because you are creating those thoughts. So you're just basically fighting yourself. And if you try to fight yourself, you will always lose. So then you can repeat that same process that we did in the last one, steps 4 through 6. So with that new phrase. So if my new phrase, for example, is I'm more than qualified to work for Jackie Chan, then I would say I, Eric, am more than qualified to work for Jackie Chan. You, Eric, are more than qualified to work for Jackie Chan. Eric is more than qualified to work for Jackie Chan. And I'd repeat that same process. So maybe I would do that. Maybe I would do that just once for each thing. Maybe I'd do it twice. It's just whatever you're feeling. So that's the whole technique. I'm curious, did anybody actually try it as I was talking through it? And if so, how did it go? And or any questions?
I actually used my example for typing the notes. I said, I, Petrus, am a triathlete and I have completed an Ironman. You know, I can't swim right now. My swimming is really bad, even though I come from an island. In any case, I use this exercise as an exercise for me.
Yeah.
So any thoughts, any questions, guys? So how often do you do this, Eric? How often should we try to have this, I guess, visualization / positive confirmation exercise? How often should we do it? And yeah,
it really depends. I sort of personally, I go through phases where I use this stuff. So if I feel like I have some sort of a goal that I'm really hyped about, that I'm really amped about, then I'll do it. I'll probably do this exercise, like I said, every day for 10 minutes, maybe for like a month. And then once I feel like I don't feel like doing this anymore, I stop doing it. But every time I do it, I can feel, like I said, like creating those connections in my brains, and it sort of starts to shift the way that I'm thinking about this thing. So do it as much as you want. The more you do it, the more impact it's likely to have. But if it comes to a time when you feel like bored or like this isn't doing it for me anymore, then stop doing it. But I would say at least give it a chance of like 10 minutes a day for say 2 weeks. Just give it a shot and see how it feels, see how you like it. You don't have to do it every day for the rest of your life, but anytime, like I said, like the way that I use it anyways, anytime there's a specific thing that I'm really wanting, I will apply it to that thing maybe for a couple weeks or maybe even just 1 week. But I think the more regularity you practice this type of thing, the more likely it is to work. And also, like, so this is like a very specific practice. You don't have to do it exactly this way. Really, the most important thing, like I was talking about in the research section, is generating the feelings. Generating the feelings that you would have if you were to achieve this thing that you want to achieve. And the more that you do that, the more easy it is for you to actually achieve that thing. I think it was Petros or somebody from Behive posted the Muhammad Ali quote, which can anybody remember that? It was like, if my brain, the way he said it was super cool because he's Muhammad Ali and he's way cooler than me, but he said something like, Petros, you remember it?
Yes, I do. It's if the mind can conceive it, the body can achieve it. And also he also says,
I think the heart was in there somehow.
If my mind can conceive it and my heart can believe it, then I can achieve it. He also says, I do reps, I don't count the reps. It's just like until it hurts, something like that. Anyway, yeah, very cool guy.
Yeah. So there's the two parts. There's the mind, like, can you conceive it? Can you think of this thing that you actually want? That's what I was talking about in the very beginning. What do you really want? We got to be able to conceive that first. Once we've conceived the thing, can you believe it? Can your heart believe that thing has actually happened? And if you have those two things, then just like Ali was saying, then you can achieve that thing. So that all this visualization exercise is designed to do is help you facilitate that part around your heart believing it. The conceiving it needs to come from all that stuff I was talking about earlier, letting go of extrinsic motivation, tuning into that thing that like makes you feel something. That's the conceiving it part. this whole exercise is just about the believing it part. And then the more that you can do, the more that you can believe it, the more likely you are to be able to achieve that thing. So some closing thoughts is that these techniques don't substitute for the actual work. They just make it easier. And please keep dreaming about crazy shit. And here's my graphic for crazy shit. Is this combination. In any questions? I have some more like logistical stuff that I want to say, and then I'm going to hand it back to Petros for some Behive logistical stuff. But any questions on any of this content before we start wrapping up?
We have a question from David. You said you do meditation. Does it help you in achieving your goals? And which online platforms or applications would you recommend?
Yeah, I think meditation helps. I think meditation, for me anyways, a lot of it is about tuning into those feelings on a deeper level. That is to say, we can think about feeling sense of feel happy, but that's a thought. And thoughts are not like, that's not how our brain makes decisions. That's not how like things actually work. Thoughts come after. Thoughts are something that happen. Thoughts are the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. What meditation helps me do anyways, it helps me get in touch with what is underneath that thought. What is behind that phrase, I am happy? What am I actually feeling? So meditation is sort of like fine tuning my ability to feel all of that. So I kept on harping on, look, you want to feel the physical sensations associated with achieving that specific goal. So the way that meditation helps me for that is it helps me get better at feeling those things. It helps me get better at directly experiencing those things rather than just thinking about those things. So that's how meditation helps me. In terms of apps, I'm not a big app user for meditation. One that I know is good is Headspace. That one seems to be cool. But personally, I'm more of a find a teacher, like a legit teacher, and stick with them. And also, I'm also for me, well, I'll just say personally, I kind of hate capitalism, and I hate the fact that meditation is turned into like a commodity that people are selling, because that's totally antithetical to what it's all about. So if you're looking for a teacher, I would avoid teachers that require you to give them money, or okay, if you want to be my student, you pay me, $100 a month or whatever the hell. I think, in my opinion, the best meditation teachers don't charge, but they will have some kind of like a donation thing. So it's like basically donation only. In Buddhism, that's called dana. It's just like a practice of generosity, but literally if I know if I didn't give my teacher a single cent, that she would still teach me just as happily as though I gave her double what I give her now. So, and if you're looking for an organization that does that, check out Dhamma, DHAMMA.org. They have really crazy, intense meditation retreats. They're 10-day, or actually, I think they really are more like 12 days. Hardcore meditation retreats all over the world, and they're free or donation only. And you could literally not give them any money, and that would totally be fine. And that blows my mind that they are able to do these on a huge scale. Literally, almost every major city in the world has these 10-day meditation retreats for free. And that includes housing, food, everything. So if those are super extreme, but I'm just giving an example that stuff like that is out there that might help you find some stuff. What other questions we got?
We have a question from Anna. By the way, meditation, amazing. I also tried Headspace, highly recommend it. So Anna says, any tips on how we can use the visualization technique to quit severe procrastination?
I guess so. You could make that let's use the Muhammad Ali quote or whatever. If your mind can conceive it, can you conceive yourself as somebody who doesn't procrastinate? And let's not make it negative. Let's not make it, I'm somebody who doesn't procrastinate. Let's turn it into a positive statement like, I always get shit done, for example. Okay, I always get shit done. There's the conception. That's the thing that you want to go towards. Now, first of all, does that actually make you feel excited, or does that make you feel bored or guilty or something like that? Because if it makes you feel negative things, then that's not what we want to do. Remember, we want to find the love. Where is the love? What is the what is the phrase that is going to make you feel, if I was that way, I would be in love with myself? That's what you want to find. So maybe it's not, I'm somebody who gets shit done, but let's just use that as an example. I'm somebody who gets shit done. Okay, there's your phrase. And then you turn, okay, Anna, I'm somebody who gets shit done. You, Anna, are somebody who gets shit done. Anna is somebody who gets shit done. And probably what you'll experience as you're using that phrase is that might bring up a lot of negative thoughts, because I'm guessing if you consider yourself somebody who has severe procrastination, there's probably a lot of stuff that you're holding on to about who you are in terms of procrastination. So as you're dredging up those negative thoughts, figure out what's, just like I was saying before, what is a new phrase that you can use to assuage all those thoughts? What is something that that feels like you can believe it? Because again, that whole exercise, it has to, just like Ali was saying, your heart has to be able to believe it. So what's a phrase that your heart can believe that gets you one step closer in that direction? So that's how I would apply that to something like procrastination. Does that answer your question? And is there any follow-up on that?
Anna, any follow-up questions?
Cool. Any questions from anybody else?
Sure, a lot of negative thoughts, Anna. We have more questions coming up. Kaha is asking which writers or books about visualization would you recommend?
So there's one book that's super cheesy and is all about like weird vibe, spiritual energy or whatever, but it's where I got this technique from. And it's called Creative Visualization by, let me see if I can write this in the chat. That might be a better way to do this. I think it's Shakti. I might be spelling this wrong. If you Google this, you'll find it. That's where I got, I changed this technique a little bit and I took all the mystical shit out of it. But if you like mystical shit, check this book out. Or if you're like open to it and like can read it with an open mind and not get too grossed out by it, then check this book out. There it is. Another one is, I'm trying to think where it's another super lame one is The Secret. I mean, that's what The Secret is all about, is like the power of attraction or whatever, like super cheesy, like way not scientific at all, but it's talking about the same stuff. What's another one? Another one that I read a long time ago that I don't even really remember, but I can remember the name of it. So that tells me something. I think it's called The Dynamic Power of Deliberate Creation. And that one's less mystical, more grounded, but it's still like, I don't know, I'm not super into any of these books, but all the techniques that I'm sharing with you evolved from information that I got in these books. If it comes to, I'm trying to think more about like the scientific stuff, but I haven't seen much stuff that applies science to what I'm talking about, other than the way that you heard me talk about it earlier. Then that's just sort of my own way of bringing it in, which comes from, I don't know, my like own disdain for stuff that's overly woo-woo. But yeah.
I have a follow-up question on that. What are some, speakers or gurus or mentors that you follow on social media, and that, they're not so cheesy or spiritual, but, they kind of, they give you practical tips on how to get more productive or how to, achieve your goals?
Yeah. There's not really most of the people who talk about that kind of stuff from my perspective, and I have like a very I'm very sensitive to this because I've been like into this stuff for a long time. It's like, like Tony Robbins is cool, but like also kind of like, not super into him, but sometimes gets me pumped up. He says a lot of good stuff. He's got a lot of good content. Who else? There's this one coach who's pretty interesting. His name's David Pina. Like I don't know how to write the N with the tilde, but I'll write it in here. I think it'll come up if you search for it. Again, I'm not super into this guy, but he just basically talks shit and like screams at you in a way that's motivating somehow. So that guy's kind of fun, but also seems like maybe kind of an asshole, but I don't really know. Steve Chandler is a good guy. He's another coach. But none of I'm not a big like social media guy. I'm more of like I'm more of a like read a whole book kind of a guy. And I'm trying to think of good books that talk about this stuff specifically. I don't know. I
so
read a lot
maybe
of like
favorite
spiritual books.
writers.
Go ahead.
So
What was
maybe
that?
maybe your favorite writers you can think of.
I mean, read the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. That's a good one. Or what else? I don't know. The Heart Sutra. Like, so I'll write these out if people are interested. That's an ancient text. Tao Te Ching is also an ancient text. But yeah, I don't know. If you ask me my favorite writers, I just think of fiction writers. There's like I read a lot of books about this stuff, but it's usually like the people whose stuff I read are usually sort of one-hit wonders when it comes to this stuff. I mean, I'm trying to think of, there's that book, I don't know, so much of this stuff is like not exactly related to what I've been talking about. And so much of this is just like pulled in from disparate places that it's hard for me to think about that. But if anybody wants to talk more about this, I have my email is going to be on the next slide. My WeChat's on the next slide. If you have specific questions about any of this stuff, or you're like, hey, what's a book about this? Let me know. Or what's a whatever about this? Let me know, and I can dig for you. When it comes to, I guess one thing that maybe is worth mentioning is when it comes to the experiencing on a deeper level, like experiencing emotions physically on a deeper level. My favorite book about that is called Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Not really directly related to what we're talking about here, but it can help you get a much closer sense of what it means to actually feel something versus just think about it. I mean, I've read that book like 10 times, literally. So it's a good one.
This should be good. So we have another question from Malcolm. Hi, Malcolm. So this is, it says, is this method better for general or specific SMART goals? The visualization technique that you shared.
You could use it for both of them. The key thing is you want to be able to, you have to be able to summarize it in like a one sentence thing that your brain can hold on to. So if your SMART goal is like, I want to like lift weights Tuesdays and Thursdays for like 45 minutes. So like if you write all that out, your brain's just gonna like, what? You can't process all that at the same time. So you can take your SMART goal and adapt it into a specific phrase that your brain can like grab onto. But the longer that phrase is, the less your brain's going to be able to process it. So you want it to be something that, again, is going to be able to generate feelings. So you can turn a SMART goal into a phrase like that. And it's also good to still have, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely, or whatever derivation of SMART goals you use. That's all good. You just don't want to say all that every time you're writing this thing out, if you're using that specific technique.
So how long should this be, like the sentence that we have in our mind? Is it like 10 words, 12 words? Like what is like a good size so that the brain can process it and remember it and be like,
I would say the shorter the better. Just try to make it as concise as you possibly can while still containing whatever that like spark is that makes you feel excited or makes you feel something. So as short as possible, but don't make it so short that you lose the spark. You need the spark. That's it. So there's no, like, in terms of number of words, I don't really know. I mean, like, there's a lot of research about how much pieces of data the brain can take. I think it's like 7 plus or minus 2, but that feels like that would be hard to make a sentence that short for most things. So just make it as short as possible, I would say. And it's not like the sentence has to contain everything. There's nothing magical about the words that you use. We're really just using the words to generate a feeling. So as long as it generates 90s, would always be like, what type of shit would he say? He would just always talk about like, it's your ultimate destiny, or like, you are the chosen one. He'd just like get super pumped up and scream shit like that. And I remember like in one of my visualization exercises, it was just like me pretending I was Ultimate Warrior. And it was like me imagining that I was like that extreme or whatever. So there wasn't even a sentence. It was just like, I am the Ultimate Warrior. It had like nothing to do with what I was actually wanting, but it gave me the spark. Or sometimes I'll be like, I am like 2 Chainz if I'm trying to be like, I don't know, like fucking cool and hilarious. Or I am like, if I'm trying to be like loving, I'll be like, I am Gandhi, I am Marshall Rosenberg, whatever. It's not like I actually go out in the world and tell people that. It's just about me tuning into, again, that spark, that energy, something that makes my heart come alive, that makes me feel something. So what you write really doesn't matter. It's more about what does it make you feel.
Awesome. So we have another question from Anna. The question is how to be lucid and rational enough to draw a line between practical visualization and superstition or mystical, as you mentioned, because there are books and unverified theories related to occultism.
Right, occultism. Yeah. I think if you're into occultism and mysticism and weird stuff, that's all cool. Like, go ahead. Like, I think that stuff is interesting. I don't like, what's the word? I think it's fun, and I like play with it, but I'm not like betting any money on it, so to speak. I'm not putting any money on that type of stuff. And I'm not like really, I try not to like go into that stuff too much in these conversations, because it's not really, it's not backed up by like science, basically. So I try to be as scientific as I can in these things. So anyways, if you find it interesting and fun, go ahead and play with it. And the most important thing, like I was saying, is visualization is not a substitute for the real work. You have to do the real work. If what you're doing, if the way that you're practicing this is training you to think, oh, I don't need to do the real work, I can just like pretend that I'm doing the real work and imagine myself doing the real work, then you've got a problem. So if that's happening, then something else, like, you just stop doing this exercise and start doing the work that you know you need to be doing. I guess I would say that's the key, is like, you can be into mysticism and the occult and superstition or whatever, if that's fun, and if that, like, again, if that helps you generate the feeling. That's really, I think, where the power lies in that stuff, is because it plays with our subconscious mind in a way that at least I certainly don't understand. And that's the power, I think, that it has. And in terms of like other like weird mystical spiritual power, I don't really know, because I don't think that's something that necessarily can be known anyways. But yeah, if that stuff generates a feeling, if it generates a spark, go ahead and use it, and don't let it stop you from doing the real work, which is, shooting the free throws, or practicing the skill, or, practicing swimming if you're Petros, or if you're me, like, calling people up and being like, hey, like, you need any foreigners in your action movie? Like, does that answer your question, Anna or Anna? I'm not sure. Cool. Any other questions?
So guys, feel free to turn on your videos, ask any questions you might have. We have, I guess, five more minutes for questions, in case anyone has anything to add.
And so let me share the screen one more time, and I'll just run over my last logistical stuff. If anybody has questions, feel free to shout them out while I'm doing this. Let's see. Okay, we're back on the presentation. All right, so close this. So again, I'm a leadership coach. If you know anyone who's looking for a coach, give me an email. It's info@ericcouliard.com. So you've got my name, I think, on the flyer, so that will help you with the spelling. So info@ericcouliard.com. I'd love to keep these workshops free. I'm doing this for Behive. I do these on my own, usually once a month. The next one that I'm doing is going to be about habit creation, and it's happening on January 10th. Although it's going to be at 3 p.m. Eastern time, which is like 4 a.m. China time. So if you're in China, that might be kind of tough. But if you're in Europe or America, it'll probably be pretty easy for you to join if you'd like. It's happening Sunday, January 10th. Here's the link. I'll send these slides to Petros, and hopefully you can send them out to everybody, so you don't have to like frantically write this down. There we go. Yep, looks like he'll do that. Like I said, I like to keep these free. If anybody wants to support the work that I do, you can support me via Patreon. There's coffee. That's just the thing. Patreon is like a monthly, give me $5 a month, or coffee's like, just give me $5 once. or if you want to add me on WeChat, I don't really know what's up with Americans getting money on WeChat. You can give me money on WeChat, or you can just ask me questions on WeChat. You don't have to give me money at all. Yeah, I try to be, like I said, I kind of hate capitalism. So this is a donation only thing. If anybody wants to donate, that'd be great. If you don't want to donate, I still have fun doing this. So I really appreciate you all coming out.
Just like meditation, you know, you shouldn't pay for meditation, so you shouldn't pay for leadership. Is that what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
It's something that you have to find a way to develop yourself. Amazing. This was great. Thank you, Eric. We still have a few questions. I really like the technique. It's very simple, and I'm going to give it a try, as you mentioned, for 2 weeks. We have a question from John. Any other practical and scientific tools recommended that you can use to align, that you use with visualization to be more productive to achieve personal daily goals? I guess the question is like, you know, do you have any tips on how we can become more productive to achieve small goals, like the daily goals, carrying the rock?
It's really, I mean, it's so different for everybody. I can tell you the stuff that I use, but I'm like a nerd about this stuff. I use an app called Todoist. I'll write it in the chat. It's, I'm pretty sure there's a desktop version. It's just like, there's a web page version. There's a mobile version or whatever. And I just like write down all the shit that I want to do every day, and I check it off, and you can make like repeating tasks or whatever. That's like how I keep track of all the shit that I want to do on a daily basis. Some other stuff to think about, I guess, like another, when it comes to just like productivity, there's a good book called Deep Work, I think, by Cal Newport. And he just basically talks about, look, if you want to get anything of value done, it requires like focused attention on that thing. So, and he goes into like all the science behind that, a lot of background behind that. And then he also talks about the practical ways of doing that. One of the biggest things that he talks about in that book is just time boxing. So for me, I have like all these habits that I do on a daily basis. Like I want to meditate every day. I want to practice Kung Fu every day. I've been learning Japanese, so I want to practice Japanese every day. So I like box in my calendar. Here's when I'm going to meditate. Here's when I'm going to practice Kung Fu. It's not like I necessarily need to do it at that specific time, but because I see it in my calendar, and my calendar like dictates everything else in my life, especially for my work, I'm just more used to doing it that way. So I guess I would say those two things are two things that work for me, but again, they might not work for you. So it's all about just exploring and seeing what's out there and finding what works for you.
Amazing. Yeah, time boxing is super useful. Pomodoro. We have, Eric, can you show your last slide again? You have a request from the audience.
Hang on. This one. Yeah. Oh yeah, and again, so if you travel or whatever, and you want to keep, sometimes you can go to the workshop, sometimes you can't. I have a mailing list too. It's on my website, ericcouliard.com/mailing-list. I only send out one email a month, and it just tells about, okay, here's last workshop, here's last month's workshop. Usually I try to post a recording if I can remember to record, which I don't always do. And then here's info about next month's workshop. And that's usually all that's in there. It's like, one paragraph. It's a lot of links.
We have a question from Elias.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so if there's still time for any thoughts on using visualization techniques to overcome bad experiences?
I mean, it's still making me think of that phobia research. And like I said, I'll share this out, and you can look at the research yourself, and I'm sure that'll lead you into a bunch of different stuff. But I mean, phobias, I think, are kind of a bad experience, like fear. I wouldn't call that a good experience. And it's used a lot effectively, and there's a lot of science behind how that works in those experiences. So it really depends on the nature of your bad experience, how extreme it is, how intense it is. I'm not like a psychologist, so if it's like really seriously traumatic, then I don't know if this would be the best thing to try, but maybe. I'm not sure. But anyways, if it comes to using this for a bad experience, I would say it could be something you might want to try that I don't think would hurt would be to recall the experience, assuming recalling the experience doesn't make you completely relive that trauma, and trying to, as you're recalling that experience, thinking about it in a way that doesn't make you feel so terrible. So thinking about it in a way, like another like example from my meditation teacher is like creating space around it. And the metaphor that she uses is, if you are in, imagine you're in like a tiny, like you're just in a box that you can barely fit in. You're like totally squeezing this box, and somebody takes the lid off the box and throws a tarantula inside of that box. You're probably gonna like, oh, you're gonna freak out, right? Now imagine you are in a room that is like 2 meters by 2 meters, so like a pretty small room. And somebody opens the door and puts a tarantula in that room. You're still gonna be like, oh shit, you're still gonna like want to get away from the tarantula, assuming you're afraid of tarantulas, which I certainly am. But then imagine you're on a basketball court and you're on one hoop and somebody sets a tarantula down on the other hoop. You might be like, oh, that's interesting. Like you might like even like want to walk closer to the tarantula and see if you can check it out, because you know that it can't jump on you from that distance, or it can't hurt you from that far away. So what's happening is you're widening the space around that tarantula so that you can become curious about it. So usually, in my experience anyways, I can only speak for myself, when I have bad experiences and I recall them, I tend to get stuck in them, or I get mired in them, or I wallow in them or whatever, because it feels like I'm inside of it, or that space, there's very little space around it. But the more space I can create around that bad experience or that thought, the more likely I am to be able to observe it with curiosity and a rational mindset. So yeah, if you can create space around it so that you can observe it with more curiosity, I think that would be helpful.
So again, it's all about like stepping away from the situation and trying to see it from the outside, as if it's not you who's experiencing this, is as if someone else, and then you can be like an advisor or a supporter to your own self.
Yeah, like an anthropologist or like a scientist observing a science experiment. If you were a scientist and you're doing some experiment in which a chemical dissolved, you wouldn't like cry when it dissolved. You just note, okay, a chemical dissolved. So that's how we want to look at this type of thing. It's just how can you observe this thing objectively? And the more that you're able to do that, probably the less likely it will be to have like power over you. And what I mean by that is the less likely it will be to make you feel awful or whatever.
Awesome. I guess we can quickly share our final remarks from our side, and then we can take a group screenshot, I guess, because this is an online event thanks to COVID. Again, big shout out to Eric. This was really useful. I've made a note of the technique, and we will be sharing the notes of this session with all of your recommendations, the books, and the people that we should follow on social media or not. If you haven't done the future survey yet for Behive, you can scan the QR code. If you have issues with it, you can add my WeChat, Petros Jack. Let me type it for you. And next session is all about discovering our strengths and how we can use them to achieve our goals. So again, next Wednesday is organized by Behive Shanghai. It's a free event, an hour and a half. Check us out if you haven't yet. So again, thank you so much, Eric. This was incredible. Let's turn on our cameras. Thank you, Elias. Thank you, David, for having your video on. Really encourage it. It's especially Entribe and Ettore. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your names wrong. Thank you so much, guys, for really being engaging, and for everyone for staying until the very end of the session. So shall we do a martial art or something? I don't know. So I'm gonna count to 3, and then I'm gonna take maybe 5 or 6 screenshots for 5 seconds. So 1, 2, 3. 蝎子. Amazing, cool. Thank you guys for joining us again. Big shout out to Eric. Thank you for staying. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
So, Eric, what's the best way to connect with you? Is it LinkedIn? Is it WeChat? How can our guests interact with you?
Yeah, I'd say WeChat is good.
WeChat.
Yeah, feel free to have me on WeChat. Yeah.
Amazing. So good to see you. Good to have you guys, and see you next time. Thank you, Eric. Have a good day in the US and good night in China. See you guys. Bye, David.
Thank you,
Bye,
Petros.
Elias.
Bye-bye.
Bye.